Oh, hey kids! Let's talk about 5 little flowers here, and then we will learn about how to be healthy. And we will talk about how to make a lot of money as well in the end of the video. So as a former nanoscientist, I find it really interesting to understand the little details about everything in life, especially in nature. If you want to have a good life, you need to have a healthy body. And if you have a healthy body, then you can do whatever you want and be happy. This is going to be very, very low tech, very simple, easy to understand. So here we have a happy flower, and then we got the 5 not so happy flowers. And now we'll talk about why they are unhappy and why this one is happy. And then we can apply this knowledge in our own life. The reason this flower is happy is because it gets the right nutrition, vitamins, minerals. It has a healthy work environment without toxins, like doesn't work in a factory with toxic air and this and that. And then it has a good lifestyle with exercise, enough sleep, and a good social life. And it spends time in nature and gets some sunlight because that produces vitamin D and is shown to be healthy. So now, if we look at these 5 not so happy flowers, let's talk about how medicine works. We also have something called the bingo level that we will talk about later. So this first flower here, it is an unhappy flower. It has some chronic inflammation. It's easy to get sick. And the reason for that is it has a nutrition deficiency. So down here you see the flower has roots. And in this case, the root cause of this health issue is a nutrition deficiency. But now comes the doctor. And he's a friendly fella. And he will give you some. And that will make all the unhappiness go away. It will delete the symptoms. So now apparently the symptoms are gone, because what it does is it provides something called symptom treatment, but it usually doesn't remove the root cause in many cases. Okay, now let's take another example. The second unhappy flower here, it has another problem. It has enough nutrition and sleep and all that, but it works in a factory, so it breathes in toxic chemicals every day and gets toxins into the biology, which creates also health problems. But then you guessed it right, the friendly doctor comes along and he gives you some pills. And whoopty-doopty, the symptoms are apparently gone, but the root cause is not gone because you're still getting the toxins. The root cause remains in this case as well, just as the first little flower, where you still have a nutrition deficiency. If the body doesn't have the vitamins and minerals that it needs to function, well, guess what? You're still going to have the same problem. Now let's go over to the third flower that is also unhappy, and that is because it has some lifestyle habits that are unfortunate, such as it doesn't sleep enough, it doesn't exercise, it doesn't have a social life, which also is proven to affect health outcomes. But then you guessed it right, the friendly doctor, he gives the flower a bunch of pills, whoop-de-doopty, deletes the symptoms, but you didn't remove the root cause. It still has the same lifestyle that created the problem in the first place, and so the problem will return if the pills stop getting into the mouth. Now the fourth flower is also unhappy because it never spends time in nature or in the sunlight. Sunlight is free vitamin D, and spending time in nature is also shown to be healthy, especially with sunlight. But again, then you can eat a bunch of vitamin D, but if you forget to eat it on a holiday or something, you might get sick. So eating vitamin D, okay, it can delete the symptoms and make things better, but you should still consider doing it the natural way, the way your body is evolved to function, by also spending some time in nature. And now, kids, it gets really interesting. So these first 4 unhappy flowers, they of course help sell some medicine. But now I'm going to talk to you about how to make some good old big cash. And for that reason, I'm going to put my CEO hat on. And imagine I'm the boss of a big company that likes to make money on these things. So as a CEO, I'm getting paid a salary based on how much cash flow I can generate with my decision making for this corporation. And so I usually make decisions to make more money. There's 2 ways you can make a ton of money in this industry. The first one is inventing mental diseases by simply having people that have unhealthy lifestyle and bad social life. You take these people and then you name all these abnormal behaviors. You simply label them with the diagnosis that you invent. And this is a standard procedure. And so you can actually sell a lot of medicine for everybody who feel unwell one way or the other, where in reality, the reason they don't feel well is usually simply just because they don't have a social life, they don't exercise, they don't sleep in a bad environment socially, and that just makes you feel unwell. But that can be monetized. Now, let's talk about the second way that is a proper cash cow, and that is something called batch selection. And when you produce new batches, especially of things that can be injected, oh boy, you have a nice little choice to make as a CEO. You can select batches based not only on how much they help people, but also how much they potentially doesn't help people that much, potentially create a little couple of issues down the road that then would lead to some other flowers popping up over here, if you know what I mean. And that is called batch selection. So they have like, I don't know how many hundred batches of a product they test, but then, the CEO, he's walking around talking to the researchers, and then he's like, hey, what does this batch do? And then this researcher, he'll say, this batch created these and these problems. It's maybe not that good because we put this compound in there and it has these effects. And then the CEO is like, that sounds pretty interesting. Well, how about we put a little bit more of that in there and open a bottle of champagne? Because then we can maybe get a little bit better salary next month, because then we're going to up the sales of all the other things, right? The researcher is like, is that the right thing to do? And you kids out there, that's not the right thing to do, because these big boys with the big boss hat on, they should be working to make you healthy, right? Yes, sir. But no, sir. When you become an adult, you like to make money. And that's something that kids don't always understand. And you know what? There was a time around 2020 where a big company, I think it was called something like Fiverr or something like that, that made a lot of money, by the way. But the boss, he was so friendly to all his staff. He was a good man in this case. He decided to give a special batch of a certain product to his own staff. I don't know why. Maybe he just wanted to make sure that his staff was okay, because he ran a company. No further comments. And think about it, what this CEO did was actually really good and really important, because he followed the most basic and most important rule of being a doctor, which is to always use informed consent before you give any products to any patients. And informed consent means that you have to inform the patient of all benefits and all potential long-term risks of using any product. And the CEO, he knew very well that for such a new product or a new technology, then there's simply no long-term safety data for these products because they're new technologies, right? And to be very clear here and show you the strong logic, it takes 5 years to collect the 5-year safety data profile of any product, and it takes 10 years to collect the 10-year safety data profile of a product. And so that means that unless you have a time machine, which I assume they don't have, even in such a big, wealthy company, you cannot provide these safety data unless you have a time machine. And I think he knew that. And this story is actually very similar to one particular doctor who knew this very well, and she wanted to protect her own personal integrity as a doctor. And so she decided to inject thousands of people with pure salt water with no harm at all. Instead of giving them this new product with an unknown safety profile, she chose, okay, I'm gonna be true to my purpose as a doctor, which is to always provide informed consent. And so she decided to inject all her patients with salt water instead of this unknown substance. And if you look at the big picture, this action by this doctor was actually very similar in nature to the action of the CEO, who decided to give, most likely, a batch of a known product with a known safety profile. It could have also just been salt water, basically. This is just pure speculation, of course, but the logic is quite strong here. And this is, of course, not just a single story. Throughout the entire academia, there has been a huge split since 2020, where all the top academics across the world, most of them, the people who value truth and justice, when these new procedures were rolled out, and so there was other academics that were more interested in advancing their careers and maybe getting a better position. So they took the chance to go along with the flow, so to speak, and then leverage the situation. But even doctors and professors, like this famous university professor from Denmark, she has worked her entire life on how to develop certain injectable products safely. And even she was very concerned and expressed her concern about the protocols. Also, a big problem was the international emergency law that basically in some countries made it illegal to speak out the true scientific data if it went against the emergency law public narrative. So there has been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know about, because the media were not allowed to explain all angles of the story because they should keep one story because of the emergency law. And I know about this because I come from a doctor family with my dad being a head doctor and 3 uncles also being medical doctors, where one of them actually was a professor at Stanford. So I do have insider information about these topics, just to be clear. And so if we look at the bingo level, it starts from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here is the big bingo because here is the big dollars. This category of health conditions is so scalable, it can be scaled up to an incredibly high level, where basically everybody is unhealthy if it continues. Already about 50 years ago, they started to increase the amount of these products you had to take up to, I think it was about up to 70 shots in US. That increased the number of cases of a certain chronic condition from 1 in 10,000 kids that got this chronic condition to now 1 in 33. That is a huge increase in chronic condition. There is some progress going on here now. There's a new research starting with a new management that will look into this at the very high level in America, the country of freedom and hopefully justice. So let's keep an eye on that. So anyways, that was a little quick talk about how to be healthy and how to make a lot of money from health. Adios, amigos. See you on the next one.